A very good evening to all of you. I welcome you all to the ICANN initiative, the Hindu and Indian Express analysis. So now let's start with the discussion of the topics. Today we'll be discussing yesterday's newspaper and also today's newspaper. So because there was 1 day lag now, so I wanted to make sure that we don't go with any lag. So that day's newspaper we should be done by discussing by the end of that day, that's by that day's night. So today we'll be discussing today's as well as yesterday's newspaper. But again, not much news both the days because again most of the articles were again on United States elections and the Bihar election results. So let's quickly finish it off. So let's start with the topics of the day. The first issue we'll be talking about is the role of the Finance Commission in India. So this is a part of your GS syllabus too, and as far as the Finance Commission is concerned, you must know the basics that Finance Commission comes under Article 280 of the Constitution, and also this 15th Finance Commission, which has now recently tabled the report that was headed by N.K. Singh. So that is N.K. Singh was the chairman of the 15th Finance Commission. So now Finance Commission has been mandated constitution in the Constitution to act as a balancing wheel of fiscal federalism in India. So it has to ensure how the divisible pool of taxes between the center and the states are to be divided between the center and the states, and also how it has to be divided amongst the states. So this is a mandate of the Finance Commission. So therefore now the N.K. Singh headed 15th Finance Commission has tabled the report, has now submitted its report, which is going to outline the roadmap for a period of 5 years. How should this pool of taxes be divided between the center and the states? So this period of 5 years is going to be from 2021 till 2025-26. So this is the period over which the N.K. Singh headed 15th Finance Commission has now given a report about the fiscal roadmap that has to be followed over a period of these 5 years. So now that the report has been submitted by the Finance Commission, it has also again given rise to a lot of issues. So this editorial discussed basically some of the issues now relating to the Finance Commission and how the states and the center have been dividing the share of the taxes. So the first issue is regarding the lower share. The states have always felt that they have the responsibility to carry out a large number of developmental functions, but however their share in the divisible pool of taxes is low. However, if you look at the 14th Finance Commission, the 14th Finance Commission has recommended that 42% of the divisible pool of taxes will have to be given to the states. So this was a very high percentage that was recommended by 14th Finance Commission, because before this it was just 32% that was transferred to the states. So the 14th Finance Commission recommended that 42% of the divisible pool of taxes will have to be given to the states. So the states thought that now they will have more fiscal space, they will have more fiscal autonomy, they will have better financial resources to carry out various developmental activities and implement various welfare programs. But however, what the states finally realized was that they actually got a lower share of the taxes. The reason for this was when the 14th Finance Commission recommended the 42% to be shared with the states, the center started to increase the number of cess, the number of surcharges. So all of this are those kinds of financial income to the government, to the central government, which the central government keeps for itself. So cess and surcharge is not to be shared with the states. So that's how the center started to get a lot of money through the cess collections and surcharge collections, which were not shared with the states. So the states ultimately realized that they actually got a lower share of taxes because the center started to get more income through cess and surcharges, which the center wouldn't share with the states. So this was one issue. The second issue is the GST compensation issue. The reason how this has become an issue is even before the 15th Finance Commission submitted the report recently, the center and the states already had issues between them regarding the GST compensation. the states had to be compensated for their GST shortfalls, but however, the center, because of the pandemic and the expenses that the center had to bear for managing the pandemic, it said that the states will have to borrow and then manage their GST, and the center will not be able to compensate to the states beyond a certain point. So this has led to a lot of issues between the center and the states, while many of the states had disagreed that it is the center that has to borrow and pass it on to states, and it should not be, the responsibility should not be pushed onto the states to borrow. So there were already issues before the 15th Finance Commission report regarding the fiscal relations between the center and the states. So this fiscal relation between the center and the states was already in a kind of tension because of the GST compensation issue. So now whatever report that has now been tabled has now been submitted by the 15th Finance Commission. Definitely the states are they are looking forward to it, that it should not further deteriorate their fiscal position, rather it should further empower them fiscally. However, though the report has already been submitted, but it is not yet in the public domain. This is because it will be in the public domain once it is tabled in the parliament, which is going to happen when the parliament session is conducted, which may happen mostly next year now. So till then it is not going to be in the in the public domain. So this has also given rise to some insecurities, that already there are fiscal issues between the fiscal tensions between the center and the states, and this 15th Finance Commission report should further not escalate this tension between the center and the states. The third issue is related to the terms of reference of the Finance Commission. Usually, when you have read in your polity also static portion, you must have read that it is a center which decides the terms of reference of the Finance Commission. The states hardly have any role in deciding what should be the terms of reference of the Finance Commission. So this year there was an expansion in the terms of reference of the Finance Commission, and the Finance Commission was also asked to look into the financing of the defense and national security also. So even apart from the other things, that the formula for sharing the tax resources between the center and the states, and how it has to be divided amongst the states, apart from all this, the terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission also said that it also will have to look into the defense and national security as a sphere, as a field. So that is again an expansion of the terms of reference, and the states do not like such expansion in the terms of reference of the Finance Commission in the first place, because it doesn't happen with the consent of the states. It is a center that unilaterally decides the terms of reference of the Finance Commission, and there is no consultation or coordination with the states in this matter. So the states don't like whenever the terms of reference is expanded. And secondly, if the Finance Commission also will have to look into the aspect of defense and national security, then some amount of financial allocation will have to be made to this as well by the Finance Commission. Now, a financial allocation separately for the defense and national security could as well mean that the state's share may be cut down. So this is again something that the states definitely do not like. So therefore this is the third issue. The fourth is related to the performance grants. So among the terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission was also for the Finance Commission to suggest on what basis performance grants can be given to the states. So the 15th Finance Commission was of the view that performance-based grants should be given to the states based on how well they are performing on some of the initiatives. But this has become an issue because it is upon the various initiatives that the center has started that the performance of the states are going to be measured. For example, is it direct benefit transfer? So the direct benefit transfer was a scheme that was started by the center, but the states are going to be analyzed on the performance of how they are implementing the direct benefit transfer scheme, which was actually not started by them at all. It was started by the center. So the states are going to be analyzed and on how well they are performing and how well they are implementing some of the initiatives that was actually started by the center. Based on that performance by the states, they might be given some performance grants. So this again is disliked by the states because states feel that they will have to be analyzed for the performance of schemes that they have launched, not on the performance of schemes that the center has launched and not on the basis of the center's priorities. So this is another issue that the states are also disturbed with. The last is related to the population data. The 15th Finance Commission has also used the 2011 population data while making its formula for the division of tax resources between the center and the states. But many of the southern states are opposing this, have also opposed this before. The reason being, earlier the 1971 census data, population data was used. But now if the 2011 data is used, then many of the southern states will lose out, because the allocation of financial resources to the states also depend upon their population. So the more populous states will get more resources and the less populous states will get less resources. That is how it is. So the southern states have done really well in controlling the population explosion. So they have done really well on controlling the population, while the North Indian states have not done the same. So the southern states are opposing the considering of 2011 census data, because they feel that if 2011 census data is taken into consideration, then the northern states will receive more fiscal resources because of their sheer population size, and the southern states will stand to lose because they have actually taken the population stabilization measures very strictly and they have stabilized their population. So stabilizing the population is actually a good thing. But if for that your fiscal resources will be less, if you get less fiscal resources because you control the population, then it is not a good thing. It means that for stabilizing the population, these southern states are being penalized, which is unfair. So this is what the southern states argument is regarding the use of population data for measuring the how much resources must be given to which state. So this was the whole article related to the 15th Finance Commission and what were all the broad issues related to it. Now let's move on to the next topic. The second topic we'll be discussing is the issues related to employment. So employment and the issues related to it are a part of your GS syllabus 2 as well as your GS syllabus 3. So in your GS syllabus 3 also, when I was writing the exam, we had a question like what is jobless growth and what are the factors responsible for jobless growth. So like that, employment and the various issues related to it are a very important topic for your exam. So basically in this entire article, there was nothing much except for a couple of data that we had to remember whenever we are answering any question on employment. So let's just quickly take a look at the important data. The first is about the total employment. So out of the total employment that is generated, just 7% of that is that belongs to the government. So that is the government generated employment that includes the employment provided by the public sector undertakings as well. So this data is very important when you have to illustrate how much important the private sector is if India has to generate enough jobs for all the aspiring youth. So just 7% of the total jobs or employment generated is in the government sector, is in the public sector, but in the rest of the cases it is the private sector which will have to come forward, which has to be incentivized to generate more and more number of jobs for the aspiring youth of India. So in that regard, you can make use of this data to show how much important the private sector is and how much it needs to be encouraged by the government to generate more jobs. The second is the issue of self-employment. So government has always been very promoting with respect to the self-employment. So a scheme was launched by the government which is called as Mudra, which involved providing loans to the micro and the small enterprises. So even though out of the Mudra loans, 95% of the loans have been given to the Shishu category, which is the small and the micro enterprises, in spite of that, the growth in the self-employed people has been very less. So in fact, the people who are engaged, who call themselves as self-employed, it was 81 million in the period from 2005 to 2012, while it has now reduced to 63 million between 2012 to 2018. So therefore, this again is an indication that the economy has become such that the people who are engaged in self-employment are also now moving away from it in search of more safe and more secure employment. So this shows how the government again has the responsibility and the onus to further promote initiatives like Mudra and to encourage people to take up more entrepreneurship and to be self-employed as well. So these were the two important data that was present in this, that was mentioned in this article. Apart from that, nothing else was really important. Now let's go on to the next topic. Now, this topic is about mental health or education. So again, health or education is a part of your GS2 syllabus. So basically in this whole editorial, it was talking about the importance of psychological counseling, whether it is to the students as part of an educational system, or whether it is to the people in general as part of a basic healthcare system. So this opens up with a case study that happened in Odisha. So it was observed that when Odisha faced the super cyclone in the 1990s, so that time many of the children were left traumatized because of the super cyclone. So they were disoriented and they had to be given some amount of psychological support, for which a program was started by UNICEF NIMHANS and an NGO named Bharat Gyan Vigyan Samiti. So the three of them started a project for psychological counseling of the children who were disoriented and to help them to cope up with the trauma that they have just faced out of the disaster. So these children were made to take part in activities like storytelling, making up of toys, then dancing, music, and all of that. So when the children were made to take part in these kinds of activities, it was seen that the children were able to just pour out their emotions and they were able to handle their emotions better. And how the children were disoriented before and traumatized because of the cyclone and the disaster, now they could be balanced in terms of the emotions more properly, and also they started to come back to the schools and to talk to each other. So this psychological support that the children received really helped them a lot to overcome the trauma of the disaster. So this case study can be used to show the significance of psychological counseling to people who have undergone some trauma or who are suffering from some mental health issues. So this is something that can also be incorporated in an educational setup, where it is not just about teaching the various subjects, but also we need to provide children with some important life skills so that they can balance themselves emotionally and emerge out as stronger, mentally stronger individuals. So as part of an educational system, this will provide a life skill support to the children. And of course, as a part of a health system, our health system is lacking in providing the basic mental health services. So even though at the grassroots level we have the primary health centers and so on, but then the psychological support and the mental health facilities at the district level are also very far and few. So that support can be provided. And what this editorial argues about is that when it comes to the mental health support, we have specialists like psychologists and psychiatrists, but then it is very difficult to make sure that these specialists are enough in number and at the grassroots level. So what we can do is to take the help of community volunteers. So these community volunteers could rather be trained in some simple psychological things, that they can just talk to the children, they can talk to the people, and they can help the people manage their emotions. So this is one very good way of provide psychological counseling to people who face mental health issues. So that can be done by training the community volunteers. So one such example has been the WHO's recommended talk therapy, where just by mere talking to the people can help a lot, because many of the people don't find anybody to talk to and share what is going on with them. So this talk therapy is again a similar kind of a thing, where we train the community volunteers and they then talk to the people and help to make sure that if there are any emotional things which are suppressed within, then there is an outburst, it comes out, and then people can manage themselves. So this helps a lot in dealing with the mental health issues at the grassroots level. So this is what this entire article was about the Odisha case study, how such psychological counseling by community volunteers to the children, by making them do some simple activities like dancing, music, painting, toy making, etc., was able to make the children forget the trauma and move on in their lives. And also the talk therapy of WHO, which again emphasizes on community volunteers who could be given some basic training in the mental health issues and how that can help us handle the mental health issues at the at the grassroots level. So this can be used both in the field of education as well as when you are writing any answer on mental health issues. Now let's move on to the next topic. This topic is about pollution and environment. So this is a part of your GS3 syllabus. Basically, this entire article is talking about the state pollution control boards. So as a part of the pollution control mechanism in India, we have some institutional mechanism in the form of a central pollution control board, the state pollution control board. We have a legal mechanism also through the Environment Protection Act, the Air and Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, and many others. So out of this, whenever you are asked to critically comment upon the setup of or the mechanism for the pollution, controlling pollution in India, so we have several such mechanisms, be it institutional or the legal mechanisms. So there are many such mechanisms. So out of this, the institutional is the Central Pollution Control Board at the apex level, which is at the central level, and at the states we have the State Pollution Control Boards. So this is the setup. So this entire article is focused on the inefficiencies of the state pollution control boards at handling the pollution at the local levels. So this article discusses various issues that the state pollution control boards are facing, because of which they are extremely inefficient to handle the problem of pollution at the local level. So let's start with the issues. First is a staff shortage. So there is a perennial staff shortage when it comes to the state pollution control boards. So the example is given about the Haryana State Pollution Control Board, which is actually functioning with a 70% staff shortage. So with such staff shortage, it's impossible for a commission to ensure that the local pollution levels are at the minimum. So staff are the backbone, are the support structure for any institution or organization, and with such huge staff shortage as much as 70% in the case of Haryana, it's impossible to do the task efficiently. The second issue is a lack of specialization. When we talk of the Central Pollution Control Board, we have several the scientists there are in fact encouraged to specialize in some of the areas. For example, it could be bioremediation. That is how the wastes can be tackled or degraded with the help of some of the microbes and other microorganisms. So that is bioremediation. On how the air quality can be managed, on how to handle the hazardous wastes. So these are some of the areas where the scientists are encouraged in the Central Pollution Control Board to specialize in these areas. So scientists not just specialize in these areas, but even they are promoted on the basis of their specialization. But such a stratified system is not present in the case of state pollution control boards. So here the scientists are not encouraged to specialize, so there is no specialization at all in the case of SPCBs. So this again is a hurdle, big hurdle when it comes to tackling pollution at the state level. The third is lack of legal skills. Now the SPCB tells something or gives some order which again is going to be contested by the firms and industries. So these industries might go to courts upon the denial of permission by the state pollution control boards. So in such cases, the SPCBs are also expected to have good legal skills with them. But however, it is observed that in many of the states, there are engineering graduates who work in the state pollution control boards, and these engineering graduates will have to don the hat of a lawyer, and they will have to present the case in the courts. So they don't have full-time public prosecutors, and this is a very big hurdle for the SPCBs. So when they go to the courts without any full-time public prosecutors, when these engineers do the entire legal process, then there is a very big chance that the SPCBs are going to lose the battle against these industries. So it then becomes very difficult to hold the industries accountable in the courts for whatever faults they have done and whatever pollution that they have caused. So they lack the legals as well. The next issue is that they are of course chronically underfunded. So it has been seen that in many of the cases, the SPCBs receive funds through the no objection certificates that they give to the industries, and the other permission that they give to the industries, the consent to operate and consent to begin operations. So these are the various permissions that the SPCBs give to the industries in the state level. So it is the fee that the SPCBs collect by giving these kinds of permissions and certificates. So that is a major chunk of money that these SPCBs get. So these SPCBs work upon the money that they get from giving no objection certificate and other kinds of permissions, rather than the budgetary allocation from the government. So that budgetary allocation is very less, and the SPCBs have to just rely upon the money that they get from granting various permissions to the industries. So when they have so much little money available with them, definitely they cannot focus on the more critical and important functions of SPCBs, like doing some research or developing the capacity of the scientists and carrying out some tests. These are the critical things that they are we expect them to do, but due to the lack of funds, these critical things, the core things, cannot be done. The next is the additional responsibilities. It is also observed that in some of the states, these SPCBs are given some additional responsibilities apart from the responsibility of managing the pollution levels in the state. For example, in the case of Haryana, the Haryana State Pollution Control Board is also given the control of the poultry in the state. So the poultry is also looked after in Haryana by the State Pollution Control Board. So such additional responsibilities on SPCB will definitely divert it and distract it from its main and core functionality of ensuring the minimum pollution levels in the state. So this again is kind of diverting and distracting the body from managing the pollution because of these additional responsibilities. So these were the various flaws or the hurdles in the functioning of the State Pollution Control Board that were discussed in this article. Now let's move on to the next topic. Now this is the last topic we'll be discussing, and it's also a small one. This is a production linked incentive scheme that the government has announced recently for 10 more sectors. So this comes under your issues related to manufacturing as part of your GS syllabus 3. So as we have discussed even in the beginning how manufacturing, and there was a question related to the jobless growth in India when we were discussing about the data on employment. So similarly, manufacturing is again a very important question. So what are the issues related to manufacturing in India can be a very important question in your GS3 paper. So this whole thing is very small news, which is a production linked incentive scheme that the government has announced to boost domestic manufacturing. So this is going to apply for 10 more sectors, because there was a PLI scheme earlier also, and the government's outlay is 1.46 lakh crore for this production linked incentive scheme. And these 10 sectors have been so selected which has the ability to generate a lot of employment. So this can be the food processing sector, it is the solar photovoltaic modules manufacturing, it can also be the electronics and textile. So automobiles has in fact got the highest outlay out of this 1.46 lakh crore. So automobiles, so these are some of the areas that have been selected under these 10 sectors where the production linked incentive scheme is going to be applicable. Now, more importantly than the factual part is how this is going to help us. So the first thing is our production linked incentive is given, which means producers who are going to produce are going to get something based upon the production that they are doing. So based on the production, they are going to get incentives by the government. So therefore, it is going to enhance domestic manufacturing. So domestic manufacturing is going to improve in India, which means our Make in India program is going to get a boost out of this. And if we are going to improve our domestic manufacturing, it is also going to improve our exports. And our exports will improve because our domestic manufacturing is also improving and its effectiveness is also going to improve. So it is going to make our products more competitive also at the international market. It's going to be more competitive. This is also going to generate a lot of jobs and employment, particularly at a time when the economy is in a slowdown because of the COVID-19 crisis. So these are the various, and also it is going to attract investment. So why? Because government is offering incentive, production linked incentive. So therefore it is going to attract investment also into various these areas of manufacturing, that is those 10 sectors of manufacturing. So even technology is going to improve in these areas because of the incentives being given by the government, and it's also going to increase the economies of scale, because only when the manufacturers operate on a bigger scale, the cost per unit gets reduced, and that is when our products will become more competitive. So these are some of the benefits that we can think of from the production linked incentive scheme that the government has now announced. So this was about the manufacturing topic. And then so this is the question for today: what ails the Indian manufacturing sector? Analyze. It's a 10 marker question for 150 words. Somehow this question is seeming very familiar to me. I've forgotten if I have given a similar or the same question before. So if we have not taken up this question before, so do start writing your answer. It's been a long gap since you guys have written. So do start writing the answer in the comment section. So these were the other articles. Again, it is related to Bihar. It's again related to Bihar. Then otherwise it's related to there were more than 4 or 5 articles on Bihar, and then again on US elections. So not really again much important last 2 days. So this is again related to Bihar, again US, Bihar. So basically it was all about Trump and Bihar for these 2 days. These were the only important articles. So for today, thank you.